Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is, well, it's actually a Christmas case which fits in with Crimes at Christmas. I did it last year. I mean, I had a Santa outfit on last year, but today, okay, I'm just wearing red. It'll have to do. But yeah, this will be one of two videos and it occurred, well, many years ago now, and it is pretty much a legendary case in the eyes of true crime. It is the murder of the Lawson family. Charlie was born on the 10th of May in 1986. His parents were called Augustus and Nancy, and they lived in Lawson, that's where he grew up. They had 10 children, 11 children altogether, and worked on a farm. So then back in 1911, like I said, this case happened a while ago, Charles actually met a woman who was called Fanny Manring. And yes, that is her real name. Don't comment on that. And they, after being together for about a year, they started their family. They ended up having 8 children in total. Sadly, one of them did die though. It was one of their sons. He was the third born child and he died in 1920 of pneumonia. And I believe he was called Edward. So the family worked as I think they worked on a tobacco farm or something like that, and they ended up saving up all their money. And then they ended up being able to buy their own farm, which was on Brook Cove Road in North Carolina, I believe, and that was in 1927. And this area, Charlie's brother had already moved into, so he had family there too, his brother. Now we're talking 2 years later, so they've lived on this farm for 2 years, happy families. They've had more children in that time. Like I said, they ended up with 7 children, well, 8 children, but obviously one passed away, sadly. But at this point in their life, Charles was 43 years old, Fanny was 37. They had a daughter called Marie, who was 17, Arthur, 16, Carrie, 12, Mabel was 7, James was 4, Raymond was 2, and then they had their youngest daughter, who was called Mary Lou, who was just 4 months old. This was just before Christmas of 1929. They go out into town as a family, and they, Charles treats the family to new clothes and things like that. And it was thought that it was a little bit odd, but they just figured that it was like Christmas, and they earned their money and they saved, and so why not? And so they also went for this family portrait, which a lot of people have speculated that photos in them days were very expensive and probably out of the means of Charles's entire family, and yet he did it anyway. People speculate as to whether he wanted that being his last legacy, like the last ever photo of them all together before he did the horrific thing that he was about to do. And this was going to happen, sadly, on Christmas Day. So we're on the 25th of December, 1929. Marie, I believe, was making a cake. I think Fanny was helping too. It was going to be this 2-tier cake with, Marie was decorating it with raisins, and she was busy making that for the family. Carrie and Mabel have decided that they were going to go and see their uncle. Like I said, he lived pretty close by, and so that's where they were going to go. So they get ready and they start heading out. But little did they know that Charlie was actually hiding, or well, not hiding, waiting for them near the tobacco barn. And he had his shotgun. He had a 12 gauge. As the girls come around the corner, he shoots them both. And then he bludgeons them to make sure that they are certainly not alive. He then takes their bodies and puts them inside the tobacco farm storage shed thing, or the barn, or whatever it is. And then he carries on his killing spree. One thing I forgot to mention as well, one of the sons, Arthur, was actually the 16-year-old boy. He was sent out to go and get some more ammunition for hunting and things like that. So he was in town running errands for his dad. Charlie actually sent him. And so that leaves a lot of speculation, which we will get into. Well, no, I'll do it now, okay? So he's 16, and it's wondered as to whether he actually sent him out there to spare him for what was going to happen. Maybe he had a favourite, I don't know. Or that possibly Arthur was the only one that could have stopped him. And so he sent him away so that he could carry out his horrendous plan. So yeah, who knows? But that's where Arthur was. Now, the problem is that the farm was massive, you know, they were hunting. It wasn't abnormal to hear that around Christmas, so nobody got alerted to it. Nobody really knew what was going on. A few shots here and there. Nobody thought anything of it, including the family. Fanny was sat outside on the porch, and then Charles comes up with the gun. And I believe, obviously, she screamed, but he shoots her. And that was right outside of the house, so then the family did hear that. Marie screamed and Charles came inside and shot her. Then the two youngest boys had ran off and they had hidden in the house because they were terrified. But sadly, he just looked for them, he managed to find them and he killed them too. And then he went on to kill little Mary Lou, who was 4 months old, by which he is reported that he bludgeoned her to death, which is just beyond horrific. She suffered a fractured skull, I believe, and that is what she died of. Once all of this was done, Charles then went out into the woods where he stayed for hours, apparently, and he was pacing up and down around this tree. There were literal, you know, beat marks, footprints in the mud as to where he'd been pacing around this tree. So he's doing that, right? Arthur comes back from shopping, finds blood everywhere. It's a horrific scene. There's no bodies there because Charlie had actually taken all of the bodies and put them in the barn. He had like stones behind their heads and crossed their arms over them. And so I guess he followed the blood trail and found all of his family murdered. It's awful, absolutely awful. Arthur calls the police, of course. The police come down. They are looking for Charlie, wondering where on earth he is, what's gone on, blah, blah, blah. And then they hear this gunshot ring out from the woods. So they go and investigate and they find that it is Charlie. He had actually taken his own life with the shotgun that he had used to kill all of his family apart from Arthur. And like I said, they found the footprints around the tree that looked like he'd been pacing around it as if wondering what he should do next. They also found these letters on him, which were addressed to his parents and basically took the blame for everything that he'd done, kind of thing, but he never actually gave a reason as to why he'd done it. And that reason is still unknown to this day. People have theories, obviously, but it isn't fully known. So not long after this horrific thing had happened, his brother actually went ahead and opened the Lawson home basically as it was. I mean, the cake that they were baking that Christmas day was still there with the raisins on. And people would go around and get a tour of it, which is kind of creepy, especially since it wasn't long after it all happened. Eventually, the cake had to have a casing on it because people were taking the raisins off of it as souvenirs. I mean, people are weird, right? Definitely. And then eventually, it was, like, shut down. Then I have seen that in 1945, Arthur actually died in a motorcycle accident. He was only young, in his low 30s, I believe, 31, 32, something like that. And he left behind, sadly, his wife and his 4 children. So that was basically all of the Lawsons of that family just gone, fully gone. Well, obviously he had kids and stuff, but you know what I mean. Now, these books were made over the years by this author. I can't remember the names of them. You can look them up if you really want to. And some theories came from that because this book had actually claimed that Charlie may have been sexually abusing Marie. Not unfounded. They had, I believe somebody that was doing a tour heard the family talking about it, and so, you know, it got passed on. And they were thinking that he was sexually abusing her, that he had a sexual incestual relationship with her. And then in another book, years later, it actually came out that potentially Marie was pregnant with her father's child. And so maybe this is a reason as to why he might have done this. It's also said that it was Fanny's sister-in-law talking about it, and she was going on about how Fanny herself had actually spoken to them and had expressed her concerns as to their relationship. And she was discussing this with Stella, she overheard Stella saying it, something along those lines. But Stella had actually passed away the year prior, and so Fanny knew about this for at least a year, kind of thing. And then a classmate of Marie actually came forward within the second, with regards to the second book, and actually said that Marie had confessed to her that she was pregnant and that Charlie was the father and that Fanny knew. So this is all, we don't actually know that this is the reason. I mean, personally, if it is true, some people have looked at the photograph, the last photograph ever taken, and said that it looks quite tight around Marie's belly, which it kind of does. So could that imply that she was getting a bit of a baby bump? Who knows? And Charlie killed everyone because he was so ashamed of what he'd done or wanted to hide it. I have no idea, but I think that's a very valid theory, personally. There was another theory that he'd actually suffered a head injury whilst working on the farm, like months previous, and that he was never the same again. That totally changed him. However, when they actually looked at his brain and things after he had died, they didn't find any evidence of that. Whether that was just technology at the time not being able to pick it up, who knows. But yeah, that is the end of it. The entire family just completely wiped out by their own father. It is such an awful case to happen around the holidays as well. It's so devastating. But yeah, that is the end of this video. If you guys have enjoyed, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway, that's all I have today on the case of the Lawson family. Thank you so much for watching. Have a very good Christmas, and until next time, bye.